when we were kids, I don't know if you fooled around with M80s and you'd blow up an M80 and like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. And you would try to put the M80 in this thing. You would try to put it underground and see if it would blow up. Anything would happen.
Yeah.
You would do all this stuff with M80s. And then every once in a while, one of the guys would bring something that was bigger than an M80. And you thought the reaction to the M80 was going to be like an M80. And you know what an M80 does, right?
Right.
And then you put the other one that was a bigger thing, more powerful than M80, and like, holy shit, we were not ready for this, right? And some people could get hurt. How do we even test super EMPs? Like, I know North Korea has apparently, you said North Korea has tested super EMPs, but aren't super EMPs almost one of those things? Yeah, I see that article right there. North Korea tested a super EMP weapon that could potentially wipe out nearly the entire U.S. population. So here's my question. How the hell do you know? How do you know that could wipe out the entire U.S. population? And how do you not know that maybe it's either worse or weaker than what you think? This is like one of those things that's tough to test. You know, you can test it in one region. That can affect a lot of different people. So how do we really know the true negative impact of EMP, how bad it could be, how big it could be, or how small it could be?
Oh, I think we have lots of evidence. During the early 1960s, for example, when we did the test over Johnson Island. In fact, we didn't even know about the EMP phenomenology. We just knew that the Russians knew about something, that some phenomena was happening because they were conducting a series of tests over Kazakhstan. They were detonating nuclear weapons of varying yield, including very small ones and very big ones in outer space, over their own territory, over Kazakhstan, which was an inhabited part of Russia. Kazakhstan's an enormous area, about the size of France. And so we decided, and they were breaking there had been an agreement to not do atmospheric testing anymore, and they were breaking the agreement. This thing was considered so important for them to do that. And so we did a test over Johnston Island and lit off a nuclear weapon in outer space. And it basically knocked out the lights in Hawaii, caused automobiles to fail, knocked out radio transmission stations and things like that. And Hawaii was 1,500 kilometers away. It was just on the very edge of the field, where the field is weakest. And so we could see that had, profound effects. And we have built EMP simulators. After we stopped atmospheric nuclear testing and exo-atmospheric, because this is actually being tested in outer space when you detonate the weapon. It's not in the atmosphere. But we have these EMP simulators, so we can put all kinds of electronics. The commission on which I served is the last really concerted effort where we did the broadest and most in-depth analysis of the effects of EMP on modern electronic systems by putting all kinds of things into simulators and frying them, because we know what the EMP fields will look like. You can calculate it from the gamma ray output of a nuclear warhead. It's called the Compton effect. The gamma rays will come out of the bomb. They'll knock electrons off of atoms in the high atmosphere. The electrons will spin at the speed of light, following the Earth's magnetic field to the horizon. And that's what makes the EMP, and it basically creates this pulse that's like a super energetic radar wave or radio wave. For a normal nuclear weapon, it's 50,000 volts per meter. That means for every meter of dimension of the target, it gets 50,000 volts injected into it. So the wires on this thing here probably are a half a meter. So this thing would get 25,000 volts injected into it at the speed of light. I'm sure it's not designed to survive that. If you had an automobile that was, typical automobile might be 4 meters long, so that's 4 times 50,000, so 200,000 volts injected into the car's electronics at the speed of light. A super EMP weapon can generate twice that or more than twice that, and so you're talking about extraordinarily powerful fields. Our electronic civilization, I'm answering your question in my long-winded way about how do we know. Well, we know because our electronic civilization is pretty much, almost everything is designed to operate on 120 volts or less. That computer sitting in front of you probably operates on 25 volts. It steps the power down but the outlets in this area put out 120 volts. Okay, so things that are designed to operate on 120 volts almost certainly are not going to survive when you inject 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 volts at the speed of light into them. And we know they don't survive because we have simulated that for many decades. Both the Department of Defense and the commission on which I served, we weren't just a paper commission. We were about actually testing modern electronics to see were the electronics vulnerable. We knew they would be vulnerable, but one of the questions we wanted to know is, are they getting more vulnerable? And they are, because microchip technology, which is responsible for the great prosperity and efficiency of our modern electronic civilization, every decade it gets 10 times faster, operates on 10 times lower voltages, okay? But that also makes them every decade about 10 times more vulnerable. So we're going in the direction of greater and greater vulnerability. And then we have other things that we can look at. What happens when the lights go out, for example, in hurricanes or tornadoes or ice storms? What happens to society? We have lots of data to show that 24 hours after the lights go out, about when people miss their third meal, the glue that holds society together starts coming unglued. And when society just starts very quickly disintegrating. So we do have a lot of data. It's not just theoretical. We have, we can test this stuff through simulators. We have seen it tested in nuclear detonations of the past. And we have real world experience every year from hurricanes, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina. You go back and you look at what happens to society. And this is just a small scale thing when you have these blackouts that affect regions, and they're only temporary. Imagine if you had, a phenomena that would black out all of North America for a year. That's how we tried hard to think, how do you keep 330 million people alive for a year with no electricity, which means no water, no food. The food supply, we only have enough food in this country to feed 330 million people for 30 days in the big regional food warehouses. And it will immediately begin to spoil when the temperature control systems and refrigerators and stuff stop receiving electricity. You can't get the food to the grocery stores, because the trucks and transport vehicles would be paralyzed. There's only enough food in a grocery store at normal consumption rates to feed the local population for 2 or 3 days. How do you keep 330 million people alive for a year with no food, no water, no organized government? You can't. I mean, we tried very hard to come up with ways of doing it, including mobilizing the army to airdrop food supplies into the cities, meals ready to eat. We have, a billion meals ready to eat. It's not enough, and it's not practical. That's why our recommendation was, we can't afford to take an EMP hit and expect to survive. We've got to harden our critical infrastructures, protect the electric grid.
Yeah. So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.